Pablo Alvarado, can you talk about why you want President Obama to issue an executive order and what it should say?
Well, good morning. First of all, let me tell you that our country is going through the dilemma of whether to include or exclude the 11 million undocumented immigrants who are working very hard, raising families, toiling in the fields, in the construction sites, and they are simply being denied equality. They're being denied justice. Their humanity is not being recognized. And what is worse is that instead of having a federal government that protects this vulnerable segment of our society, we have a government that systematically persecutes and deports them. Both parties are responsible for this reality. We understand that the Republicans have given us the politics of self-deportation. They have given us the Arizona-style laws. But at the other end, we understand that the president has built an incredible deportation machine. He has created and nationalized deportation programs that have ended up in the deportation of over 2 million people now. This is changing, and the reason why it's changing is because suffering is speaking. Last Saturday, there were 100 events where affected communities came out and said, this is enough, this is my story. They have protested, they have marched, they have engaged in direct civil disobedience, and as a consequence, they have made sure that the end of deportation becomes Plan A. So the question is now it's not whether the president will act, it's when will he do it.
And David Leopold, what about the issue right now of the prospects in the remaining months before everyone starts gearing up for the November elections of some kind of immigration reform coming out of Congress, and what might that immigration reform look like if it did come out?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. And I wanted to point out that what we're looking for here is number one, a permanent solution to this humanitarian problem, this economic problem. It's a problem that engulfs the whole country. And the only group that can fix it, is Congress. And right now, unfortunately, the House of Representatives, the Republican-dominated House of Representatives, has simply failed to do its job. Speaker Boehner, Eric Cantor, Kevin McCarthy, the leadership, they have completely thumbed their nose at the American people. The American people, by huge margins, in poll after poll, have expressed their will for immigration reform, which includes, by the way, a pathway to lawful compliance for the 11 million plus undocumented non-citizens in the country. So we need a permanent solution. We need a permanent solution. And my worry is that even if we had an executive process, in 2016, we don't know who the president's going to be. And I want a law that protects all Americans and keeps all American families together. Now, in terms of where we are, I think we do have a window. I think we need to remember a legislative window still in 2014. And I think we need to remember that the Republican Party needs immigration reform for its own political existence, for its own long-term future. If they ever want to see the White House again, if they ever want to remain a majority a dominant party, or a major party, I should say, in this country, they're going to have to get with political reality. This country cannot continue to function with an immigration system that cuts off our global competitiveness, that limits our employers from bringing in workers in shortage occupations, that keeps entrepreneurs and others who would build businesses here and create jobs for American workers out. The 11 million are not the problem. They're a tragic humanitarian crisis, which is a symptom of the bigger problem. That's a completely dysfunctional system, immigration system. And Congress, Speaker Boehner, they're the ones who are really the deporters in chief. They're the ones who are really not doing their job and need to fix this problem.
But David Leopold, you correctly focus on the obstacles in Congress, but don't mention the whole issue of President Obama's policies of deportation. For instance, the New York Times on Sunday said that Mr. Obama is correct when he complains that long-term immigration repairs have been throttled in Congress. But they go on to say Mr. Obama has compounded this failure by clinging to a cold-blooded strategy of ramped-up enforcement on the same people he's promised to help through legislation he's failed to achieve. What about the issue of the president saying one thing but continuing these mass deportations?
Right. Well, let's look at this a bit in perspective. First of all, the deportation machine was not built by President Obama. It was built years before, and in fact, these awful numbers began under the last administration. And I can remember back in 2008, when under the Bush administration, we had military-type raids in places like Postville, Iowa, where they arrested and felonized, that is, convicted of felonies, nearly 400 Guatemalan workers who were here just to feed their families, and in fact devastated the economy of Postville, Iowa. So this terrible situation didn't begin with President Obama. Now, that said, I believe that the president and the administration have a shared responsibility with the Congress to make sure that the American families are safe and American families are together. And why do I say American families? Because we can't think of undocumented families as being all people without papers. You have the reality of the situation is you have families where a mother or a father is undocumented and everybody else is a citizen or a lawful resident. So we have mixed families. And I agree with, I understand what you're saying about the New York Times, and I thought that was a very well thought out editorial. And honestly, the paper, the article that came out Monday, that followed it, or Sunday night, written by Ginger Thompson, was an expose on what's really going on the ground. And in fact, most of the cases in that article are my cases. So I know the situation personally as an attorney. I see it on the ground. I deal with it. Innocent people are being removed from this country right now. People who should not be included as priority removals, technically speaking, are included in priority removals. And there's a lot of numbers, playing games with numbers, I believe, by the Department of Homeland Security. And I think that the Department of Homeland Security, in specific, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ought to be following the directives that are coming out of Washington. There's a disconnect, in my view, between what Washington, the Department of Homeland Security in Washington, puts on paper through Morton memos on prosecutorial discretion, telling people, as the president said, let's focus on the worst of the worst, not the mothers. Let's focus on the murderers, not the mothers. There's a disconnect, because what we find out here in the field, where the world really exists, is that Immigration and Customs Enforcement doesn't pay a whole lot of attention to the Morton memo or to other directives that they use smart enforcement. I'm sorry. That
New York Times expose is very important. As President Obama says, we're talking about the criminals, the gangbangers, the people who are wrecking communities being deported. The Times finds 2/3 of the people being deported, in fact, have committed either minor violations like running a traffic light or have committed no crime at all. Right. But I wanted to ask Pablo Alvarado about the comment of David Leopold, why he's opposed to executive action. Not only David Leopold, but the Bipartisan Policy Center, among the think tanks in Washington, who say reform efforts should focus on Congress. Teresa Cardinal Brown, the immigration policy director at the center, has said if the president were to take very strong executive action, he would be completely writing off immigration reform until 2016. Pablo Alvarado.
Well, the president obviously made a miscalculation in his effort to build his enforcement credentials. He has become very aggressive in the enforcement of immigration law with the idea that by being tough on immigrants, he would persuade the extreme right-wing Republicans that are holding hostage this debate in the House of Representatives. Obviously, this debate is not moving forward at all. We've been relying on this strategy for almost 14 years. It's time to try something new. And we believe that if the president intervenes right now, would actually improve the chances of immigration reform. If the president was to extend DACA to the fullest extent possible, suspend deportations, that would actually remove the fear of deportation for so many people who would actually engage in the political process, speak for themselves in this fight for immigration reform. If the president acts, it would send a very clear message to the Republicans. It would tell them, look, I am going to legalize people with or without you. If you don't like it, come to the table of negotiations. Throughout these years, the Republicans have said, okay, we'll give you legalization. Just give us the militarization of the border. Just give us E-Verify. If the president acts, essentially, the president will be removing that bargaining chip off the table. And then we can have a rational debate with the Republicans. Right now, this debate is not moving forward whatsoever. Both parties are playing politics, and the only one who can actually infuse this debate and move it forward is the president. He can actually intervene and stop the deportations at this moment. President Obama is the one who nationalized the Secure Communities program. He could easily come and with a stroke of a pen say, I'm not going to implement this program anymore. President Obama already did DACA, the deferred action for childhood arrivals, that essentially prevented the deportation of many, many young people. That was good for the youth. That actually helped us towards immigration reform. What gets us farther away from immigration reform is the policies of deportation, is the criminalization. Giving people relief improves the chances.
Well, Pablo Alvarado, in that vein, this issue of whether the president will act or not, let's say he doesn't act. Let's say he decides that he doesn't want to take the chance of hurting the Democratic Party in the November elections by creating a crisis. What will be the response of the immigrant rights movement? I mean, I think back to my prior life as a community organizer and as an activist. In August and September of this year, if there is no action, what do you see as a possibility for moving this forward? I mean, what about the possibility of a freedom summer of tens of thousands of young Latinos moving into Washington, D.C. and creating a crisis of mass arrests? I mean, not just a few 500, 1,000, but 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 people filling the jails of Washington, D.C. and forcing the government to deal with this issue.
Look, the pain is obviously unbearable. That's why there are families doing a hunger strike in front of the president. And their message is very clear. Give us relief. Start with our relatives. If the president doesn't act, obviously this humanitarian crisis will continue. The suffering will continue. And again, people are speaking for themselves, because what's happened so far is that there are many people, there are many lawyers, there are many activists, there are many paid lobbyists in Washington, D.C. who are speaking for people. Obviously, that's not good to achieve political equality. Political equality is about citizenship, and citizenship is about people speaking for themselves. And that's exactly what's happening across the country. That's why there were 100 events last Saturday of affected communities telling their story. They are letting suffering speak. This will only escalate if the president doesn't act, because the pain is simply unbearable, and it's unfortunate. Right now, there are these families in front of the White House. Believe me, if he doesn't act, there will be more families that are going to come. There will be more acts of civil disobedience taking place. So the president has a choice right now. He can be the champion that he promised to be, or he can choose to continue to be the deporter in chief. Because at the end of the day, yes, we understand that Boehner is blocking the vote in the House of Representatives, and that party has been hijacked by extreme vigilantes. We understand that perfectly. But at the end of the day, Speaker Boehner is not the one who is supervising the deportations. It's President Obama, and he has the power to act. He has the legal authority to act right now. And in our view, he has the moral obligation. The people who are outside the White House are actually helping him to have the courage and to have the moral authority to act.